Hello everyone, today is 20th of March, now it's 15 to 10 in the morning Moscow time. I'm Levan Gudadze and this is my first update for a day in which I will share all the main news that are making headlines in Russian media outlets and Russian language pages on different internet platforms. There are quite a number of news that I like to share with you for this moment, and because there was no reports about some crucial changes on line of contact in the zone of special military operation, I will start straight with some additional news. RIA Novosti is reporting that right now, as I'm recording this update, in several regions of Kiev-controlled territories in Ukraine, air raid alert was declared. To be more precise, air raid is active right now in Kharkov, Poltava, Dnipropetrovsk, Kirovograd, and Nikolaev regions. It is possible that in next couple of minutes, Russian armed forces will conduct another wave of drone and missile strikes on military and logistics infrastructure of Kiev regime, and if so, of course, in next updates and also on my Telegram channel, I will share additional information about it. Also, RT's report that Zelensky changes stance on the talks with Russia. President of Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky, has indicated that a return to Ukraine's 1991 borders is no longer precondition for holding peace talks with Moscow, even as he continues to push forward with his so-called peace formula, which has been dismissed by Kremlin as absurd. Well, Zelensky may have a change of opinion when it comes to talks with Russia, but I guess it's too late now. Too late for Zelensky to come to his senses. Too much damage was done, and I don't think Zelensky is in position with whom Moscow will conduct any talks at all. And RT is reporting that Kremlin responds to Kiev's plan for a peace formula talks. Ukraine is contradicting itself by claiming that it could hold peace talk with Russia after proposed summit in Switzerland later this year, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov has said. His comments came after Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmitry Kuleba suggested on Friday that Kiev could engage in diplomacy with Moscow following the Swiss-hosted peace summit, a date for which is still to be announced. Such statements absolutely contradict their codified ban on the president of Ukraine to negotiate with Russia, Peskov said. In 2022, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky banned all talks with the current leadership in Moscow after 4 former Ukrainian regions overwhelmingly voted to join Russia. So Zelensky basically is lying openly. Dmitry Peskov is absolutely correct. According to Ukrainian law, Zelensky cannot conduct any peace talks with Moscow. They ban themselves. They ban it. Any negotiations with Russia. And therefore, what Zelensky is talking about? Strange. And as I already mentioned, the Russian side dismissed that Zelensky's formula because it's a non-starter. It's just absurd. Vzglyad newspaper is reporting that Orban, by the way, Prime Minister of Hungary, commented on Ukraine once again, and well, according to Orban, best outcome for Ukraine right now is to stay as a buffer zone between Russia and NATO, because Russia will never agree Ukraine to join NATO. It's not possible. And Orban also said that he did not see any threat from Russia to NATO. But yet again, I can understand Orban is coming from, but it's too late. Ukraine, I hardly see even slight chance that Ukraine as a state can maintain itself or can survive. As a state, no. Most likely, after this conflict will end, Ukraine will be divided between its neighbors. Russian side will control vast majority of Ukraine, and the western regions of this failed state most likely will be controlled by its western neighbors, Poland to be more precise. Hungary, by the way, who will, I believe, have a claim on Transcarpathia region, which used to be part of Hungary before First World War. And Romania most likely will also have claims on some territories of Western Ukraine. Yet again, I mean, negotiations were possible in 2022, and Russia was very open to negotiations. There was first stage of negotiations in Istanbul, in Turkey. Even some preliminary agreements were achieved, but then, well, West get intervened, Western ruling class get involved. Boris Johnson went to Kiev, high-ranking US officials went to Kiev, and they basically forced Zelensky to refuse to sign any agreement with Russia. And after that, so much damage was done that I don't think Moscow really can take Zelensky and his regime as a legitimate side with whom negotiations can be held. That's all. That's my personal opinion. Although I believe Moscow is open for negotiations. If Kiev regime will capitulate right now, hostilities will end. TASS news agencies report, and there will be no other outcome, by the way. Kiev regime will capitulate anyway, today, tomorrow, after several months or year, but Kiev regime will capitulate. There is only one outcome from this conflict, and that outcome is unconditional capitulation of Kiev regime. That's it. Yet again, in my personal opinion. TASS news agency is reporting that head of military committee of NATO made a statement that Russia has no plans to conduct any attack on any of the countries in the North Atlantic Alliance. Quite a rare, adequate statement from high-ranking official in the West nowadays. Quite a rare one. So yes, this individual, by the way, Rob Bauer, head of military committee of NATO, seems like not afraid to go against the current or main propaganda line of the Western ruling class, and saying as it is that Russia has no plans to attack NATO, while we all know that Western media, a significant number of Western media outlets or propaganda outlets and Western high-ranking officials on daily basis are trying to scare citizens of the Western states that Russia is going to attack today, tomorrow, day after, which is total nonsense, by the way. Russian high-ranking officials, including President of Russia, was quite direct about it and commented that this is nonsense. I mean, those statements about upcoming Russian attack on NATO is total nonsense. And of course, everyone who is well enough informed knows about it. And now we have a rare occasion when high-ranking official in the West is saying exactly that Russia has no plans to attack nobody in NATO. And by the way, what I just said, this Bauer, head of NATO military committee, Rob Bauer, is a rare example of adequacy in this particular case, because we have this statement, for example, from RT is reporting that the Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk stated that Europe is in pre-war era. So yet again, scaremongering tactic. They try to scare hell out of locals, so that well, they can manipulate with the scare societies much easier, and they can operate with the taxpayers' money without questions being asked. That's one of the main goals for this so-called elites in the West. And let's go through this information here. Europe has entered the pre-war era in which any scenario is possible, and the threat of war is no longer a thing of the past. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk said in an interview with the European media outlets on Friday. Tusk was asked whether war is inevitable in the light of recent remarks from the number of Western politicians about Russian potentially attacking NATO. He replied that literally any scenario is possible. I don't want to scare anyone, but war is no longer a thing of the past. it is real, and in fact it started over 2 years ago, Tusk said. So I mean, you tell me how inadequate this individual really is. 2 years ago started SMO, special military operation, that was conducted and are conducted by Russian forces to protect Russian speakers, to protect Russians basically on historical Russian land that was gifted to Ukraine for no reason at all by Bolsheviks during the Soviet era. And what Poland has to do with the special military operation? Did Russia conduct a special military operation in Poland? What he is talking about? How crazy is this individual, really? That the war started 2 years ago. What you are talking about, fucking idiot, man? What a disgraceful piece of garbage that Tusk is. And RIA Novosti is reporting also that, well, Poland dismissed its participation in Treaty of Armed Forces in Europe, and this is undoubtedly preparation from Warsaw, Polish elites, and also NATO, by the way, to occupy Western Ukraine, because in legal terms, as long as Poland was participant in this treaty, there was some barriers how much troops and military equipment and personnel could be stationed in Poland. But now, when Poland suspended this decision, NATO can deploy as many troops, as much military equipment as they want, and I believe this is definitely one more step towards preparations on the ground to conduct military operation in the Western Ukraine by NATO. And of course, Poland will participate in this military operation, because vast majority of Western Ukraine used to be part of Poland before Second World War. Such as cities, by the way, like Ivano-Frankivsk, for example, Ternopil, Rovno, Lutsk, Lvov. All these areas used to be part of Poland before Second World War. And by the way, when it comes to, for example, Hungary, Transcarpathia region used to be part of Hungary before First World War, and I mentioned Romania earlier. And of course, several areas of modern Ukraine used to be part of Romania before Second World War also. So they can have claims on their historical territories, undoubtedly, and they will have claims. And I believe right now we are observing preparations of these states, these NATO member states that are bordering Ukraine, and also NATO in general, to conduct military operation and establish control over the Western Ukraine. And that's why, in my personal opinion, Poland dismissed its participation. Poland suspended its participation in a treaty on armed forces in Europe. But anyway, let's and by the way, many of you of course know, especially if you are living in Europe, in Eastern Europe, that for last several weeks, maybe even months now, large-scale military exercises are taking place of NATO in the Eastern Ukraine. In Eastern Ukraine, and this is the largest military exercises since the Cold War. And I said from the beginning that in my reading of big picture, these NATO exercises also are part of preparations of NATO forces to conduct rapid deployment into Western Ukraine and conduct military operation there and occupy Western Ukraine as fast as possible. So we clearly have indicators on the ground that NATO is preparing for upcoming occupation of the Western Ukraine. RT is reporting. The question is, by the way, will NATO troops stay in Western Ukraine alone? And if so, then most likely it will be possible to avoid direct confrontation between Russian and NATO forces, although some local scale skirmishes could happen still. But if NATO troops will move eastwards and move south in southern parts of Ukraine, in Odessa region, for example, or in the northern Ukraine, in Sumy, Chernigov regions, or if NATO troops will be deployed on the line of contact then of course it will be all impossible basically to avoid direct confrontation between the two sides. But my reading of the big picture is that NATO troops will most likely stay in western Ukraine. That's it. But yet again, only time will tell. Let's continue. And well, RT is reporting that and this is quite interesting. Also, Russian attack on NATO troops in Ukraine would not trigger Article 5 according to media reportings. So let's go through this information. Article 5 of the NATO, which is an article about collective defense. If one member of NATO is attacked, then Article 5 can be activated, and that will mean all NATO member states are attacked, and everyone will try to defend each other. And well, Article 5 on the NATO treaty, which enshrines the bloc's collective military response policy, would not be triggered should any member's troops deployed to Ukraine be attacked by Russia. A report by German Parliament expert group seen by wire agency DPA has claimed. Reflecting the principle of collective defense of the 31 NATO members, Article 5 states that in armed attack against one or more of their members shall be considered an attack against all. If troops of NATO member states engaged in collective self-defense in favor of Ukraine in a existing conflict attacked by their other party to the conflict in the course of a battle in the conflict area, this does not constitute to case of Article 5 treaty, the experts wrote, as quoted by DPA on Friday. According to the unpublished document, Article 5 of the NATO treaty can only be triggered if member countries of the US-led military bloc are attacked on or over their own territory. So, well, quite interesting information, quite interesting message, I will say, from Berlin to other NATO member states, and also, first of all, to leadership of France, so that Macron and his associates will know that if they will go ahead with these threats that they're going to deploy French troops into Ukraine, well, they should know that when those troops will be destroyed by Russia, NATO will not get engaged because Article 5 will not work. I believe this is clear message from Berlin to Macron. And dear friends, before I continue, let me notice, if I may, that this channel, or my channels, this small media project of mine with several channels, are fully subscriber funded, and I will be immensely grateful if you will consider to support my work through with small donations through PayPal, Boosty. This is Boosty, by the way, this platform, most popular platform among content creators here in Russia, or by subscribing to my Patreon page, on which I have some extra content on regular basis. And for example, today I will publish on my Patreon page first episode of new program, Streets of Moscow. So it's non-political program. It's about literally streets of Moscow. So hopefully our Patreon community will find it interesting. So yes, as I mentioned, if you find this channel and my work interesting and useful, please consider to support. All the links are under this video in the description box and in the pinned comment. I will continue with additional news. Lentaru is reporting that Belgium allocated additional funds to service fighter jets for Kiev regime, and well, we are talking about 100 million euros, by the way, that Belgium will spend on maintenance for F-16s that were promised to Kiev regime. According to some reports, by the way, F-16s may arrive in Ukraine before end of spring, so anytime now, basically. And also interesting news that on yesterday it became known, according to media, that Sweden is now considering to transfer to Kiev regime Swedish fighter jets from Saab Gripen. Very capable also fighter jets, these Gripens are. And well, if Sweden will go ahead with the transfer of Saabs to Kiev regime, which I have doubts about, but anything may happen. If Sweden will go ahead with this, of course, that will even further destroy relationships between Sweden and Russia, which is unfortunate, of course. But when it comes to Belgium, we already know that a bunch of fighter jets that Belgium promised to Kiev regime already are in Romania, and Ukrainian pilots allegedly are undergoing training on those F-16s. And I remind you, dear friends, that Putin, president of Russian Federation, made a statement in regard to F-16s or Western fighter jets in general, and he said that if those fighter jets will be deployed in Ukraine, well, they will be destroyed as any other fighter jet that Kiev regime had previously. I mean, Soviet-era planes, for example, MiG-29, Su-27, Su-24, Su-25, and so on. But Putin was very clear that if the other countries will allow Kiev regime to use its airfields to conduct strikes against Russian forces, then those airfields, in whatever countries they are located, will become a legitimate target for Russia. So very clear, direct warning from Moscow to NATO member states that are bordering Ukraine to stay away from direct involvement in this conflict. Otherwise, there will be some consequences for that. Vzglyad, the newspaper, is reporting that member of parliament of Ukraine's Rada, made a statement that former head of SMBO, you know what SMBO, I don't know how in English SMBO is, so I will translate this if I may. So Alexei Danilov, who was recently dismissed from the post of Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council, was appointed as ambassador of Ukraine to Moldova. This was stated by member of parliament of Ukraine, Alexei Goncharenko. This individual listed in Russia as an extremist and a terrorist. So this person, this individual, Danilov, who is also quite openly stating, while being in position of high-ranking official, about terrorist attacks on Russian soil, some despicable individual, and he's, according to this Rada member, was appointed as ambassador into Moldova. Well, somewhat interesting, because Kiev regime and current Western-controlled government of Moldova probably are in talks, and these talks may intensify to conduct on topic of cooperation on military operation against the Transnistria. And if we take a look at the map, by the way, so this is Kiev-controlled territory of Ukraine. This is Moldova, and this area here is Transnistria. Used to be part of Moldova, but a few decades ago, Transnistria declared independence, and since then they are operating as an independent, non-recognized but independent state. There are Russian militaries there, the Russian peacekeepers, because there was confrontation between Transnistria and Moldova on initial stages of struggle for independence. And by appointing Danilov as ambassador to Moldova, I guess Kiev regime will further intensify talks with Moldova to conduct military operation and to occupy Transnistria, which will be a huge mistake on part of Moldova. But yet again, let's see how will the situation develop. Also, RT is reporting that, how long is this video? So RT is reporting that Ukraine lectures India, by the way, on relations with Russia. well, how out of touch with reality these people in Kiev regime really are, that they are allowing themselves to be this arrogant. They are lecturing India now. Wow. So Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmitry Kuleba has claimed India's ties with Russia have no future, unlike relations between New Delhi and Kiev. I should stop reading here, by the way. I mean, total nonsense. How you can compare Russia and Ukraine when it comes to importance of relationships for India? I mean, of course, for India, good friendly relationships, strategic relationships with Russia is one of the most important foreign policy tasks. One of the most important foreign policy tasks. When Ukraine, I mean, what Ukraine, man? Come on, New Delhi doesn't really cares about Ukraine that much. Nor any more than about relationships with any other far away from India, no strategically meaningful country. But anyway, still, let's read this news. The Ukrainian diplomat met his Indian counterpart Subramaniam Jaishankar in New Delhi on Friday to seek support for Kiev peace formula in the conflict with Russia. Even though the plan has long been rejected by Moscow. Speaking ahead of closed-door talks on Friday, Jaishankar, India's foreign minister, said, Kuleba's visit gives us an opportunity to understand the situation in your own region. Our teams have prepared a very substantial agenda for discussions. There is also certain momentum in the bilateral relationships between the nations, the Indian diplomat added. So, well, Jaishankar is a legendary diplomat, and of course, he was diplomatic while speaking to Kuleba. But, I mean, if anyone from these two gonna lecture anybody, it's Jaishankar who will definitely lecture Kuleba on any topic, on everything, basically, on principles of life. So, okay, let's enough, man, enough. I just wanted to share with you this information to highlight how out of touch with reality this Zelensky and his criminal associates are, including Kuleba, that he thinks he can lecture India, by the way, and India's foreign minister, one of the heavyweights currently on the world stage. RT is reporting that, well, terror mastermind told attack suspects to flee to Kiev, according to investigators. The chief suspects in last week's terrorist attack on the Crocus City Hall outside Moscow have testified that their orders came from mystery men who told them to flee to Ukraine afterwards. The Russian Investigative Committee announced on Friday security services detained their 4 suspected perpetrators near the Ukrainian border last Saturday. The attack claimed 144 lives and left over 200 people hospitalized. In their initial testimonies and during their subsequent interrogations, the suspects said that attacks were prepared in coordination with a man who introduced himself to them under a pseudonym, the investigative committee said in a statement. And this unknown individual communicated with these terrorists by voice messages sent over Telegram. And by the way, Telegram platform made the decision to shut down thousands and thousands of accounts that were used by extremist forces, because they pay huge attention now to this topic, especially after Russian side, I guess, shared with Telegram factual information, evidences that Telegram channels are used for terrorist activity. And as I said, thousands of accounts were suspended. And well, let's continue on the instructions of this coordinator. After committing the crime, the terrorists drive in a car towards the Russian-Ukrainian border to subsequently cross it and arrive in Kiev to receive the promised reward. The law enforcement agencies said, and these terrorists, by the way, according to some reports and their own claims, receive half of the money, and other half they should receive after they conduct a terrorist attack. And this is one more argument, one more indicator that this terrorist attack was coordinated from Kiev regime, because usually IS terrorists they don't conduct attacks for money. They conduct attacks because of their some sick ideas that they have. But these ones were definitely conducting this terrorist attack for money, and it's obvious that they were working for some third party, which is, in my personal opinion, Kiev regime undoubtedly. And yesterday, several media channels in Russia reported that security services conducted search operations in several offices in Moscow of companies that were involved in cryptocurrency exchanges, because well, there are rumors that these terrorists receive money as a cryptocurrency. But yet again, investigation is underway, and of course, in upcoming days we will learn some more. And I don't think it will take too long for investigative committee and Russian security services to come up with final conclusions when it comes to this horrible terrorist attack that took place recently on outskirts of Moscow in Crocus City. Well, RT is reporting that FSB, Russia's security service, Federal Security Service, detains 3 foreigners over terrorist plot in Russia. Russia's domestic intelligence agency, the Federal Security Service, has claimed to have foiled the terrorist plot in the country's southern Stavropol region, detaining 3 suspects, all nationals of the yet-to-be-named Central Asian states. So, well, FSB is, of course, extremely busy, always, but especially nowadays when it's becoming obvious that Kiev regime is trying to recruit people, including in Central Asia Republic, to conduct terrorist attacks on Russian soil. Just a few days ago, I reported about statements of former Russian security forces, member of security forces, who said that, for example, Ukraine's embassy in Tajikistan was almost openly conducting recruiting operations. So FSB is, of course, very busy, and as you can see, they are quite effectively working to minimize risks to civilians and to states. RT is reporting that Pentagon offers to fund peacekeeping force in Gaza, according to Politico. US offered, and by the way, next topic is, of course, Middle East, and of course, Russian media outlets pay huge attention to global events, including in the Middle East. And well, let's go through this news. US has offered funding to partners in the Middle East for a peacekeeping force in Gaza, which would police the Palestinian enclave after hostilities with Israel are over, Politico reported on Tuesday. And I shared this information. I reported about this news yesterday in headlines, and I was somewhat surprised to see this news that Pentagon is offers some funding for peacekeeping operations, while on the ground military operations are underway. And today on Interfax I see this news that Israel offered to deploy temporary some military forces or peacekeeping forces or police forces from Arab states into Gaza. Probably, and this was reported by Axios, probably there was some talks between Israeli leadership and US leadership on this topic. Then US made statement that Pentagon is willing to fund peacekeeping operations in the Gaza, and today we have information that Israel offered to some Arab nations to deploy on temporary basis some military contingent to conduct policing in the Gaza Strip. If true, maybe maybe situation in the region is heading towards de-escalation. Hard to tell at this point, but let's see. And the TASS news agency is reporting, by the way, that on 1st of April, Israeli delegation will conduct negotiations with US leadership about situation in Rafah, which is of course southern part of Gaza Strip. And right now, according to some reports, about 1.5 million people are concentrated in Rafah, which is effectively a huge refugee camp, and everyone, maybe not everyone, but significant number of people worldwide, and politicians included, and human rights activists, media outlets are afraid that if Israel will go ahead with the military operation in Rafah, that will cause another tens of thousands of deaths among civilians. So, well, on 1st of April, Israeli delegation will have a talk with Biden's administration, and well, maybe we will learn some more information on plans of Israel after that meeting. RT is also reporting that, according to article in Washington Post, US secretly sending more bombs to Israel. The US has signed off on the transfer of billions of dollars worth of bombs and aircraft to Israel, despite publicly expressing concerns about looming Israeli ground incursion into their overcrowded Gaza town of Rafah in the southern part of Gaza Strip. Washington Post reported on Friday around 1,800 Mk-84 2,000-pound bombs and 500 Mk-82 500-pound bombs are among the armament in their handover. Anonymous Pentagon and White House officials told the newspaper. On the top of that, the State Department reportedly authorized the transfer of 25 F-35A aircraft and engines valued at around 2.5 billion US dollars. The transfers had originally been approved by Congress years ago as a part of the $3 billion plus annual military assistance to their longtime ally, so did not require a new notification. So in one hand, statements about possible de-escalation, and in other hand, this information about possible further escalation. So it's definitely hard to tell what is waiting ahead of for the Gaza Strip in upcoming days and weeks. Also, RT is reporting that, well, no decision on the future of the US troops in one of the African states, according to Pentagon. Washington has not made any decisions regarding their withdrawal of its forces from Niger, where the military government has terminated the decades-long cooperation deal with the US. Pentagon Press Secretary Pat Reeder said at the briefing on Thursday, well, US forces cannot stay there as occupying forces without having agreement with local government, and therefore maybe Washington don't want to withdraw its forces, but if they were unable to reach new agreement with the Niger's leadership, then I guess eventually they will force to pull out from the region. And if I may, I will end this update now. By the way, few more news left, but I want to make this update as short as possible, and well, hopefully you will find it interesting, informative, and useful. I will report about additional several news that I had prepared on my Telegram channel. And well, if you find this update interesting, please click that like button and leave some commentary. More likes and comments will definitely help to reach wider audience. And for very same reason, if you can, please share links to my videos and my channel with your friends on any of the platforms that you are actively using. This is it for now. Have a great day and take care.